Welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Let's get to it. So here's the thing about healthcare in America. You don't really notice how fragile the system is until your bill suddenly doubles, and no one in Washington seems in a rush to fix it. That's exactly what's happening right now, because Congress failed to extend Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies. Now more than 20 million Americans are waking up to higher insurance premiums, some by hundreds of dollars a month. Not because they changed jobs, not because they got richer, but because political gridlock just won. Healthcare economists warn this isn't just painful, it's dangerous. As premiums spike, healthier people are more likely to drop coverage altogether. That leaves a smaller, sicker insurance pool, which drives costs even higher. A classic policy domino effect, and once it starts falling, it's hard to stop. And let's be clear about who's getting hit the hardest. The so-called, quote, missing middle. Now, these are people on both sides of the political aisle. These are people that are self-employed, gig workers, small business owners, and employees, low-to-income earners who make too much for Medicaid but don't have employer coverage or can't get Medicare. In other words, people doing everything right and still getting squeezed. Take 37-year-old single mom, Caitlin Provost, a social worker who tells CBS News her monthly premium is jumping from $85 to $750 a month. Or this Salt Lake City filmmaker, Stan Clausen, who also tells the network that he was paying just under $350 last year, and now his premiums are $500. In this economy, many people, that could be a breaking point for them. Now, politically, this fight is far from over. 4 vulnerable House Republicans recently joined Democrats to force a vote to extend the subsidies, though the effort is a long shot and expected to stall in the Senate. Still, some Republicans acknowledge the stakes. Politico notes that Republican Representative Dan Muser put it plainly, saying, quote, a lot of people are receiving this health care. They don't need the rug pulled out from under them. Now, voters seem to agree. A KFF poll released in December found overwhelming bipartisan support for continuing the subsidies. 84% of the people that are enrolled in the marketplace, including about 7 in 10 Republicans, say Congress should extend the tax credits. And the poll also found that if they do expire, most enrollees say either President Trump or congressional Republicans deserve most of the blame. Now, Democrats are already turning this into midterms messaging because unlike other policy fights, this one is immediate and personal. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer summed it up this way.
When it comes to health care, the damage has been done. After January 1st, it's very hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube. And Americans will know when health care dies, it was the Republicans who did it.
Republicans, meanwhile, are scrambling, blaming Democrats, blaming the system, and still searching for a simple, unified plan to lower costs.
Well, sometimes you got to be the grown-up, and you got to make the tough choice, and you got to
let people suffer? That's the tough choice?
That's emotional manipulation. This was a
$85 to $750
subsidy that was always intended to expire, so now it's gone away. We're already spending tons and tons and tons of money on healthcare in this country. We're spending more than any advanced nation. We can't just throw more money at the problem. We do need fundamental reform to the system. I agree with that, so that we can lower prices. I've pointed to we can do medical malpractice reform. We should do drug pricing reform. We should end patent abuse. We should make it legal to import drugs from other countries. We should cut out middlemen, insurance middlemen. We need a market-based revolution in how healthcare is provided in this country, in my view, not a socialist revolution, which makes it free, but it makes the care not as good as other nations have found out. That's all the things we need to do. Just throwing more money at it. Yes, I don't want to raise prices for people. I know that's hard. Democrats always have a winning message by giving you more stuff. Hooray, more stuff for you. But that's not the responsible thing to do.
Well, I think it's irresponsible to allow Americans, because Congress failed to do their job, suffer in this way. And so there's people who are not relying on any government entities in the way that they're asking for any medical coverage as government sponsored. They're not on any SNAP benefits. These are people that are in the middle working hard that literally just want to be covered so that they're not just going to the doctor and never figuring out who's paying for it. It'll end up being us, and trying to get health coverage that literally are being priced out. There's parents who have been in articles that are like, I'm just going to keep insurance for my kid because I want to protect them, but I can't afford to have it for me as well, that we're in this ACA market.
Well, you have to have it. You're required to have health insurance.
Right, but some people are still just not going to do it. That's just the fact of the matter, what happens here. There's a lot of people in this country who just decidedly don't have health insurance that are in either the gig economy or freelancers. And you have to remember, these people are not just Democrats.
Made it illegal
but
to
these,
not purchase
these people
health
are
insurance.
not just Democrats. These people are not just Republicans. These people are across the board, people that fall in this middle, 20 million people that are seeing rising possible costs in their health insurance. And so even if the idea for Democrats was to kick the can down the road for 3 years just so people can afford to have health insurance, that is something as opposed to nothing. Democrats are not doing anything. No, but instead of 3 years, how about 3 years Congress gets to work and you name all the possible ways? I can't imagine that. But in this 3 years, they can actually come up with a new plan because you know what? Republicans have been complaining about Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, since it was even pitched as an idea. And so the fact that we are like more than a decade past the idea when we first started talking about the thing, and there's no feasible plan forward that the Republicans have laid out that makes health insurance affordable in our country is absurd. And so when people start to get angry and think about who they voted for and who will change the economy, let alone the many other things that the president has already done that have made it harder for the average American to afford things, when these same Republican voters realize that they either have to decide on illegally having no health insurance or paying $850
I would say
a
that
month.
Republicans disliked Obamacare for good reason. Because of Obamacare, a lot of Americans lost access to health care plans that were rendered illegal because of Obamacare that they were perfectly satisfied with. This is the central lie of Obamacare. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. That was not true. People lost access to the kind of health coverage that worked for them. We need a market-based solution where insurance markets exist and you pick the right kind of coverage for you. Maybe you're a young, healthy person. You really only need catastrophic coverage like the kind you'd get if you were in an accident or something like that. You don't go to the doctor very much. You don't need that kind of coverage. If you're an older American, maybe it's the reverse. Let the market adapt to what individual need is. We don't have that because of it's a partially socialized system. It's not an entirely socialized system. Probably an entirely socialized system would be better than this weird hybrid system we have where so many people are still trying to squeeze out a profit, and then it's not. You don't have accountability over what the price is because you don't even know what you're paying. That's what I always say. We talk about this all the time. Is the central crisis in healthcare is that you don't know what you're paying for, so the market can't function.
Millions of Americans were not covered before Obamacare, and millions of Americans have insurance after Obamacare. And so that was a good thing. And no matter how...
Millions of people have insurance that they had insurance they liked and don't have it anymore.
Okay, but we're thinking about the country as a whole, and people still are going to go to the doctor or still go to the emergency room. Again, you're not answering the substantial question of who would pay for it when people didn't have insurance, when it wasn't, as you're saying, illegal to not have insurance. Well, people didn't have insurance and they still went to the same doctors. They still never paid the bills. So where does that just go? It just falls into this ethos of debt that we have and we have to figure out how to cover. And so this is what I'm saying.
If you wreck your car and you don't have car insurance, you got to pay for it.
Yeah, but a lot of people just don't. And so then we're just sitting here in this,
then you get
this broken system.
repo or you get
okay,
go
but
into
I
debt.
think that Republicans understand
make a bad bet, lose. That's your fault, not mine.
When people have real life examples of the fact that their costs are now going up and Democrats are accurately pointing out the fact that Republicans decided to do nothing instead of anything at all, well, then in November, Republicans are going to see those same people that voted for them to be in their position in the first place are going to say, well, I'm uncomfortable. Your leadership has failed me. And then what's the plan? So if they're okay with those results, then just know that would probably be the case because a lot of people are upset that they're paying this much or going to lose insurance or just decide to not have it at all.
Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Okay, let's talk about it. So if you're confused like I am about the White House's messaging on drugs right now, you're not alone because the logic simply doesn't add up. On one hand, President Trump is escalating the drug war with unprecedented force. On the other, he's opening prison doors for convicted drug traffickers. That contradiction isn't just political whiplash, it's dangerous. So last weekend, Trump ordered a dramatic military operation in Venezuela, removing President Nicolas Maduro and charging him with narcotics trafficking and narco-terrorism. The justification, according to Trump and his administration, is that Maduro led a, quote, campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. Attorney General Pam Bondi put it bluntly, Maduro and his wife, quote, will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. That's the tough on crime headline. But here's the part that doesn't square. Just last month, Trump pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, a man convicted in the U.S. court of helping smuggle more than 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. Hernandez wasn't some low-level player. Prosecutors once described his case as, quote, one of the largest and most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. They had even argued that he should die in prison. But Trump's explanation? He told reporters on Saturday that Hernandez was treated unfairly. He went into more detail that supposed unfair treatment on Air Force One, explaining it late last year.
The people of Honduras really thought he was set up, and it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country, and they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup, and I looked at the facts and I agreed with them.
Calling it a Biden administration setup is not accurate. Hernandez's own brother was arrested and prosecuted on drug trafficking charges during the first Trump administration. And the prosecutor of Hernandez's brother was Emile Beauvais, who went on to become Trump's own personal attorney and is now a judge appointed by Trump. There's no evidence for this being a Biden setup at all. But I digress. Let's get back to the bigger point. Drug trafficking is serious enough to justify a military invasion of one country, but not serious enough to keep another convicted trafficker behind bars. And Hernandez isn't even an outlier. During Trump's second term, he has pardoned or released multiple figures tied to drug operations, including Ross Ulbricht, who was serving a life sentence for creating Silk Road, the dark web marketplace that fueled global drug sales. As the Justice Department stated in 2015, quote, Ulbricht deliberately operated Silk Road as an online criminal marketplace intended to enable its users to buy and sell drugs and other illicit illegal goods. The administration also freed and deported Cesar Humberto Lopez Larios, accused by the DOJ of, quote, being a high-ranking leader of MS-13. Now, Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia warned at that time that the decision, quote, not only undercuts ongoing federal investigation, but also threatens U.S. national security. So what are we really looking at here? Jeffrey Singer of the Cato Institute says the quiet part out loud, noting, if this is what's motivating Trump, if it's stopping drug trafficking, why is he pardoning the Honduran president who was convicted of cocaine trafficking? He went on to say it's never been about that. They're basically using the drug war as an excuse. And that's the through line. This isn't a coherent drug policy. It's a personalized one. Similar crimes, same prosecutors, same supply chains, totally different outcomes. The fact is you can't use the federal criminal prosecutions to promote foreign policy views or solve vendettas. You cannot claim moral authority in the drug war while selectively deciding who pays the price. And you can't call it justice when it looks this arbitrary. And you definitely can't call it leadership when the message keeps changing depending on who benefits.
I'm going to derail your entire
No.
Focus
Stick
on
to the
one
focus.
specific
Okay.
one of those, Ross Ulbricht. That is my friend, who I was fully in support of having been released. He did not set up a specific drug trafficking thing. He created a site where all goods and services could be exchanged outside the purview of government oversight. Some, yes, illegal. I don't think they should be illegal. Well, I don't think drugs should be illegal. I am for drug legalization.
Trump does, and that's why he's in Venezuela.
Okay, those things were sold on the platform, and he was blamed for the illicit activity on the platform he set up. He was not participating in those activities. And then in the sentencing, the judge made a mistake, and he was sentenced as if he had been found to have arranged an illegal transaction when he had not, and he got life in prison because of that. The Libertarian Party, of which I'm a member, has campaigned vigorously for his release. When the Libertarian Party's chair met with, her name was Angela McArdle, she met with Trump. One of the conditions for the support of the Libertarian Party was that Trump would pardon him, which he did. He fulfilled that promise, and I am glad. It's one of my very favorite things that Trump has done.
Okay.
So
let's pluck one people out of the many examples that I gave, and let's compare apples to apples, talk about the former Honduras president and the Venezuelan president and how their accusations and charges were very similar, and one recently was pardoned, and one has been pulled out of his home country and brought to a U.S. jail. And let's also connect the dots, since a lot of people are raising an eyebrow saying, is this about drugs? And let's remember that when Trump was on the campaign trail in April of 2024, at dinner at Mar-a-Lago, he told a bunch of oil donors, donate $1 billion to me, and I'm going to make sure that you guys feel whole on the other side of that donation.
It doesn't even seem clear to me that the oil companies are interested in this. It sounds like it would take a massive investment for them to take advantage of
and that was some of the reporting, but then
that's what I've heard.
But all we're looking for is a coherent policy. This can't be a war on drugs when you're pardoning drug criminals of very similar.
You say that it can't be, but it can be.
No, but then how? Then he's just picking vendettas with who? So then what is the motivation? People are trying to look into that. If it's not oil, then what is it? Because you surely don't think that fentanyl is the biggest issue, because you keep mentioning fentanyl and it's not even coming mostly out of Venezuela. So what is the actual thing that you're trying to convict rid the world of, while also pardoning and putting people back in the world that are convicted of similar crimes?
I think, in all honesty, it's not about drugs.
What do you make of this?
Well, he was a evil dictator and a communist and an enemy of the United States, and so we took him out. I think that's what it's about.
Well, then he's going to go around the rest of the world and find evil communist dictators and take them all out.
Not the rest of the world, but
that's the policy that you'd like to see move forward.
I'm saying what I like. I'm just trying to explain the administration's rationale. You're right. They've offered the drug thing, oil, policing our own hemisphere, fighting communism. There's a bunch of justifications being put forward. The drug justification, which might be the technical legal justification, where they're saying this is why it's law enforcement rather than military, which I don't really
nobody buys
by at all. No one is persuaded by it. Yeah, I don't think it's about drugs. I think it's bad guy. We got him.
Right, and since no one's persuaded that this is not a military operation, boots on the ground, then when he goes to court and argues that he was illegally taken out of his country, we might have a whole waste of time that we have on our hands.
His country. I mean, he illegally installed himself as the ruler of the country.
He's still born there. He still lived there. He was taken out of his country, by our military, and they said it wasn't a war on Venezuela, it was a war on drugs. And he's saying this is illegal. The action was, this is a war with Venezuela.
Well, because I saw my friend Kat Timpf at Fox News say this. We described the drugs entering our country as a war, but we're not going to describe going there and taking their president as an act of war. We've said what they're doing is an act of war, even though they've not sent troops into our country. So clearly what we did was more of a war thing than what, supposedly they've done. So I don't think the legal justification is particularly sound. That's why it should have been voted on by Congress, and it should have been about deposing this rogue leader who is despised by his own people. His people are celebrating in the streets. They're celebrating all over the world. Videos of people celebrating. The Venezuelan people that I know, even who are, if they might be totally non-political or even like not conservative or Trump supporting in any respect, they're all cheering. They hate him. He's evil.
Two things can be true at once.
Yeah, and so I'm, even as I am hesitant to endorse regime change or say that the U.S. government should do anything, or the federal government should do anything beyond Congress's powers, I am still, I am moved, and I am happy for the people of Venezuela who are cheering the possibility of freedom taking hold again in their country, who want that, who yearn for it.
What did you say yesterday? Viva, what's the saying?
Viva la libertad. They want freedom and they deserve it. Lindsey, I believe you have a lens. What's in it?
I do have a lens today. So 5 years later, January 6th is no longer just a day in our history. It's a test of whether we're willing to tell the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, especially when it's inconvenient. So this week, the White House marked the anniversary by launching an official webpage that flips reality on its head. It accuses former Vice President Mike Pence of, quote, cowardice and sabotage, and insists the 2020 election was stolen and claims Trump supporters were peaceful. That framing isn't just revisionist, it's deliberate. Let's be clear about what's happening here. Upon returning to office, President Trump pardoned and commuted hundreds of January 6 defendants. He calls them, quote, patriots and hostages on the site. Others remember them as violent insurrectionists who breached the U.S. Capitol. Both things cannot be true. The page itself is telling. I mean, it's topped with large images of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and members of the January 6th Select Committee, and claims Democrats, quote, staged the real insurrection by certifying a fraud-ridden election. Now, election officials have obviously maintained a lack of evidence over this alleged widespread voter fraud. But it goes further, blaming the United States Capitol Police for what unfolded that day, accusing officers of, quote, deliberately escalating tensions and turning a, quote, peaceful demonstration into chaos. It's really important to remember some 140 officers were injured in the riot that caused extensive damage to the Capitol building. Officer Brian Sicknick was assaulted by rioters, suffered strokes, and died the day after the attack, per USCP. 4 others later died by suicide. But the White House claims, that same website claims, that no law enforcement officers lost their lives. The suicide highlighted the severe emotional and psychological trauma that law enforcement officers experienced during and after the riot. The death of Officer Jeffrey Smith, in particular, was officially ruled a line of duty death by the District of Columbia's Retirement Board, as a head injury he sustained during the riot was deemed the, quote, sole and direct cause of his death. This is not a disagreement over politics. This is a disagreement over facts. The White House also took direct aim at Mike Pence for refusing to overturn the election results. Meanwhile, the president continues to respond in a petty fashion. In a lengthy, meandering speech to House Republicans, he falsely claimed the January 6th Select Committee and the media never reported his call for supporters to act peacefully.
Do you know that the Unselect Committee didn't report it, that I said those words? Do you know that the news never reported the words walk or march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol? Do you know they never reported it? It's a scandal.
That's not true. They did. And they also mentioned that he used the word fight or fighting more than 20 times, including telling the crowd to fight like hell. In the years since the Capitol breach, some Republicans who once condemned the attack have softened their language. But here's the thing. They know what they saw. They know what happened. History doesn't need spin. It needs honesty. And after 5 years later, wrong is still wrong.
I agree that history needs honesty, and we should correct and call out people who spread lies about what happened on that day. I'm going to do that now. Hillary Clinton tweeted this on January 6th of this year, the other day. 5 years ago today, Donald Trump urged his supporters to attack Congress and the Capitol over a proven lie. Donald Trump did not urge his supporters to attack anyone. He told them to march. He used evocative language, and then there was a riot. You can hold him morally responsible for what happened. You can say it's his fault in some sort of psychological sense. That's fine. I hold him to blame as well. He did not urge his supporters to attack the Capitol. He did not instruct them to do so. What happened at the Capitol was a spontaneous riot. The crowd was inflamed. Again, you can say that his actions were wrong, and certainly it was based on a lie about the winner of the election, and I have called that out. And I think the impeachment proceedings were the correct way, not a criminal trial, but the impeachment was the right way to deal with it. But he did not, the people who stormed this building, who broke the windows, who fought with the police, who defaced public property, are responsible for their own actions, and it was correct to bring them to justice. And I wouldn't have pardoned anyone who engaged in any sort of violent crime, or I guess I might have commuted them. I'm a criminal justice reformer. I don't think people need to languish in prison if they're not a threat to their community, but I certainly would have brought charges. But it is not correct to say, as Hillary Clinton did, he urged them to attack. That's a lie as well.
Hillary Clinton ran for president, didn't win, and Hillary Clinton is currently not holding a public government office. President Trump is, and his administration decided. No, I accept that she's overstating and using overstating language. I accept that. But I'm also asking you to look at what our president put up on January 6th. He called Mike Pence a coward. He said no police officers died. His website is full of inaccuracies. He says the election was stolen. This is the president of our country that knows that a lot of people that saw him pardon all the January 6th criminals are inflamed by what he continues to say, and he's posting things that are just untrue on a government website 5 years later, still starting nonsense when he knows that this is inaccurate. You can't really believe that he thinks that the election was still stolen.
I absolutely think.
Okay, well, I think that's ridiculous, and
I think
facts
it's incorrect,
are facts.
but I think he believes it.
Okay, but it's just the facts. Don't facts matter? This is incorrect information over our government websites. It's like he has to be
He's
held
a sore
to some
loser,
kind
like
of
every
standard.
person who loses the election. John Kerry thought he won
Every
the
person
election.
doesn't do
Hillary
this.
Clinton thought she'd won the election in 2016.
And imagine
she said it was a stolen election because of Russian malfeasance and Trump was an illegitimate president.
Now imagine
It's
if
not
she won a
crime
couple
to be
years
sore
later
loser
and then
until
put up a
this.
website saying, I really won. Like, no, this is not
Hillary Clinton went on
accurate.
TV interview after interview, said, it was illegitimate. Russia, he cheated, that whole thing. No one treated this like it was a crime. It was just par for the course until Donald Trump's behavior. Then him persisting in thinking he had actually won was some kind of grand criminal conspiracy.
And people that align with his thought process then committed criminal acts. And so he should be
charge
able
him.
to, yes, and he pardoned all of them. So he should be able to separate the two and say, you know what, this wasn't correct. I shouldn't have pardoned those people. But even still, I'm not going to exacerbate this whole thing and keep posting lies on the government website so that those same people that were inflamed could keep feeling like justice was denied to them because the election was stolen. Like, this is silly.
This
is nonsensical.
Government websites are always full of lies because they're government websites.
And so you're putting
That's
no
where I go
onus of
to find the lies.
responsibility on the administration.
I'm not putting no.
And
onus
also,
on
I would say,
I think
don't
I've
you
been
want
very
better
clear
from-
that I put tremendous responsibility on Donald Trump for what happened on that day. What happened on that day was very bad. It was very embarrassing for our nation. The people who did those things behaved reprehensibly. I was there. I witnessed it. I saw it happen in real time. I was horrified by the destruction of public property, just as I was horrified when the Black Lives Matter people came to D.C. and smashed every window in town and threatened people and fought with the police officers in exactly the same way. It was exactly the same thing. It was people acting out at the conclusion of a very, very awful year, the pandemic, the protests, everything. I'm not saying this to excuse any of their behavior. People lost their freaking minds in real time. I watched it over and over and over again. They should have been held accountable. That's not an excuse for anyone. They were held accountable. And again, I would not have, signed a pardon and make it so like it had never happened for any of those people. Some of those people did get much more egregiously long sentences than I thought were warranted. Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, was sentenced in accordance with having essentially planned a terrorist event. He wasn't even at the riot, which again I say is spontaneous. There was no plan to attack the Capitol. It just happened. The idea that he had organized well in advance some terrorist plot to occupy the government is ridiculous, but he got like 20 years. He wasn't even there. That I would have absolutely commuted that sentence. I wouldn't have pardoned him, but I would have commuted the sentence. I found that ridiculous.
Well, the worst case scenario is that we're now celebrating these people on the government website and calling them heroes, calling them patriots, but also condescending
They're
and
not
belittling.
heroes, absolutely.
This is what, and belittling
were-
the former vice president of our country, as well as trying to downplay the fact that people lost their lives that day.
That
and
is
our
shameful.
public
Mike Pence
property
did the
was-
right thing, and yes, it is shameful to pretend otherwise.
I just want better for
It is shameful to pretend
the
that they were
administration.
heroes. They were duped into throwing away their freedom for the stupidest cause ever. Absolutely, I have no disagreement there. But it was part and parcel with a lot of bad behavior that included that continued in this city for that year. Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
Yeah, let's get to it. Marjorie Taylor Greene was on The View yesterday saying what a lot of Americans are feeling about our recent actions in Venezuela.
Militarily invading a country, killing people in the process, arresting their leader and taking him out, and then claiming this is for the Venezuelan people and saying all the charges are about drugs, but then turning around and literally every single statement is about Venezuelan oil and how it belongs to America, which I don't quite understand that. I believe it belongs to Venezuela. It's not working.
On top of that, if this were supposed to be the turning point for Venezuela, the moment repression finally loosened its grip, That's not what's happening on the ground. In fact, the opposite is actually true. Nicolas Maduro is gone, but the system that kept him in power is very much alive, and right now it's flexing. This is the uncomfortable truth. Removing a strong man is not the same as dismantling a regime. And what we're watching unfold in Venezuela exposes this dangerous gap, a lack of clear, coherent, long-term plan from the international community, especially from the United States, for what comes after this intervention. Because while President Trump talks about running Venezuela, Venezuelans are living through something far more familiar, and that's fear. According to the New York Times, security forces are boarding buses, setting up checkpoints, and searching people's phones in Venezuela. Journalists are currently being detained. Citizens are being interrogated for something as simple as celebrating. One human rights advocate putting it plainly, telling the Times, quote, they went through people's phones, opening their WhatsApp and typing in keywords like invasion or Maduro or Trump in your chats to see if you were celebrating Maduro's arrest. That's not liberation. What makes this moment especially jarring is that all of this is happening while the U.S. is backing the very government carrying out this crackdown. The same security and intelligence apparatus that propped up Maduro is still intact. I mean, his vice president is now the president. 4 days after President Trump said the United States would run Venezuela, daily life has grown more dangerous for people, not freer. The interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez, made one thing clear on Tuesday, saying, quote, the government of Venezuela runs our country, no one else. And yet U.S. officials appear super confident that she'll fall in line. Oil deals are announced. Geopolitical rivals are quietly pushed out. Democracy, human rights, those conversations, by the president's own admission, haven't happened yet. When asked by reporters, he said, quote, we haven't gotten to that yet. He's more concerned about the oil. There's no visible plan for stabilization, no roadmap for rebuilding institutions, no clear strategy for protecting civil liberties once the cameras move on from Venezuela. Instead, success hinges on the Venezuelan military, the same force deeply entangled in repression, to somehow become the solution. And the democratic opposition, fractured, sidelined, and unprepared to govern if power shifts suddenly. That vacuum is really dangerous. History tells us exactly how that story ends. What we're seeing now is a government acting with confidence, not caution. Freddy Guevara, a Venezuelan ex-congressman and member of Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Machado's coalition, warned the New York Times, quote, it shows these people are believing that Trump is playing around and they can do whatever they want. And they are. Mass militias are back on the streets. State television airs loyalty rallies. Armed forces chant, quote, always loyal, never traitors. Doubting is betrayal. I mean, we arrested an illegitimate leader and removed him from his country and have no intent to try to build their democracy. You don't secure freedom by negotiating oil first and rights later. And you don't call it a plan if the people most affected are more afraid today than they were yesterday. Maduro may be gone, but without a coherent vision for what comes next, Venezuela is still trapped.
It's true, and I'm increasingly worried this is a missed opportunity to bring about a friendlier regime, one in line with what the people of Venezuela actually want. The people of Venezuela want freedom from what Maduro represents, and Delcy Rodriguez is cut from the exact same cloth, is every bit as repressive. I was learning more about her own origin story. She is corrupt and has overseen political persecutions. This is not a kind of woman I really want to do business with. Now, sometimes we have to do business with unsavory people in parts of the world where we just have no choice. I'm not for regime change overall. I'm not for nation building, but this is a nation that was hungering for independence from communist tyranny, socialist tyranny, and it does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity.
And at the same time, it's nuanced because a lot of people don't want to be involved in Venezuela. But since the president already took the dramatic action that a lot of people look at as an act of war to take the president out of the country, well, now what the plan after that has to look like something that makes sense for all the people that are not only celebrating how seamless the mission was, but also looking at the Americans that are Venezuelan that are here celebrating and acknowledging how good it is for them. But then it's like, oh, well, people's phones are getting searched. The military over there is acting a fool. 80% of the country is still repressed, so we don't care about that. We're just talking about the oil. But yeah, also, Maduro was so bad we got him in jail.
It's like we only went halfway. Like we chose a half measure. Have you ever seen Breaking Bad? Great speech that Mike gives to Walter about half measures.
Yes.
I chose a half measure, Walter, when I should have gone all the way. I'll never make that mistake again.
Right.
I am worried we are making the mistake that ultimately that character actually does make again with respect to Walter White. Love that show. Anyway,
We
may regret
long term.
If we shouldn't have, maybe we shouldn't have done this at all. But given that we did do it, why stop here is the question.
Right.
Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's BFF.
She had a wide-ranging interview on The View.
Yeah.
Everything from saying January 6th.
They sure love her now.
Yeah, this is very nice. And coming the day after Jasmine Crockett, I thought was quite clever of them, as Jasmine Crockett called her a coward, but also said give her grace.
MTG's second time on The View in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're best friends now. They talked about January 6th, too.
They did.
Marjorie Taylor Greene changed her opinion of that whole thing.
She did change her perspective a bit. She kind of, I'm sure you saw it going around on Twitter. She kind of said, Sonny asked her multiple times, so you said the day of the 6th that you believe this is Antifa. Do you still think that? And she was like, well, obviously I didn't have all the information then. Mm-hmm. And so my perspective has developed. And so a lot of the conversation, she still believes that the president is not in the wrong. She pointed out the same things that he pointed on his site, that he said peacefully, which is part of what he said. He said multiple
I've said
things.
That too. He did not
incite the riot according to them, but he did all the things that said fight like hell and a bunch of other things. So it's all about interpretation. But whether or not he should be labeled as the person who caused this whole thing, maybe that's extreme for some people, but Marjorie Taylor Greene surely has, and I like that Sonny called her the new you. How does the new you feel about January 6th? How does the new you? And she's like, I'm not new, I'm the same person.
This is a well-established phenomenon that the right has called attention to. It's the strange new respect phenomenon, where someone becomes a darling, a beloved figure to the mainstream media the second there's someone who starts calling out,
like Liz Cheney,
Trump, like Liz Cheney, like so many other. I mean, she's this close, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She could be a contributor to CNN. She could be anchoring an MSNBC show soon.
She would have a good show, probably. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think
it happens all the time.
I think that there has to be some flexibility of thought, right? A lot of people argue that Marjorie Taylor Greene still is a conservative. I mean, she says she's standing by a lot of the values, and perhaps maybe Trump moved the party from what he promised. And so if you still feel like she's arguing for the same people, those 4 House members who went against the Republican Party and went against Speaker Johnson and said we're going to push forward the vote on ACA subsidies today, I mean, she would be considered in the same vein as them. You can't call everybody a rhino just because they're thinking about their constituents and thinking about re-election. Maybe that wasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene's incentive. I thought it was all about re-election, but since she's retiring, that's not. Maybe she really is just trying to put people over party, and that has to be okay without saying that somebody's just a straight up Democrat or Republican or in a new party.
Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Yes, let's talk about it. So Representative Jasmine Crockett said out loud what many people are feeling: frustration, grief, and disbelief about the tragic death of Renee Good.
It is so hard to sit here sometimes because I didn't come to Congress to write laws or to do things that are hurting people. I'm just asking if there's any decency or heart or courage on that side of the aisle.
She wasn't performing, she wasn't posturing, she was pleading, and she kept going.
The fact that a woman was killed, she was shot in her head, and y'all are pretending like nothing happened. I remember when Charlie Kirk got killed. Do you remember what our response was? Our response wasn't to sit there and pretend like it was okay. Is it okay because you have a badge?
Here's more.
Can y'all not just have a little bit of courage and humanity? A child. A child has lost her mom. And y'all want to pretend that it is okay.
It's not okay. None of this is. Renee Nicole Good was a 37-year-old American mother of 3, kids aged 15, 12, and 6 who are now growing up without their mother. According to her ex-husband, who is also the father of her 2 oldest children, Renee was shot and killed by an ICE agent on January 7th while returning from dropping off her 6-year-old at school. Like many of you, I watched that video too. I watched a mother be gunned down in her car on a residential Minneapolis street. And before any investigation could happen, the public was told by our government to believe that she was a domestic terrorist. There's no evidence of that. None. We don't know what led up to the encounter. We don't know what was said before the shots were fired. What we do know is that labels came way faster than facts. A witness, Caitlin Callinson, told NPR that Renee was given conflicting orders. One agent told her reportedly to drive away while the other one told her to get out of the vehicle. And an expert on police force, Jeffrey Alpert of the University of South Carolina, reviewed the video and told the New York Times, quote, "The way you evaluate this is you look to see what's the imminent threat to life. And there is none. She's leaving." That matters, especially when Minnesota officials say they're being blocked from accessing evidence, which we'll discuss in our next block. Footage of the ICE shooting scene is about to be played on screen. Beware, for some viewers, you may find this disturbing. Here's what we can see with our own eyes. The video shows Renee's tires pointed away from the agent. By all appearances, she's posed no significant physical threat to the officer, let alone a mortal one. Yet her life is now over. One of her kids, whose father previously passed away, is now an orphan, and the other 2 are just motherless. This is frightening because if federal agents can kill U.S. citizens on camera and political leaders rush to justify it, then the most basic liberties Americans depend on are at risk. What makes this even harder to ignore is that this wasn't always the tone. After George Floyd was killed in 2020, then President Trump said this.
Brutal death of George Floyd. My administration is fully committed that for George and his family, justice will be served. He will not have died in vain.
Back then, I guess law and order still left room for accountability, for restraint, for the idea that a badge does not equal immunity. Now that obligation seems to be gone, and we just can't normalize that.
All right, so where should we start? With Jasmine Crockett, I guess? I mean, it's kind of rich for her to say that Democrats responded with decency when Charlie Kirk died. She was one of the people who voted against the resolution to honor him in Congress, and also accused him of racism multiple times and basically said that his legacy needed to be thrown in the trash can. So for her to talk about that and use that as leverage over the Republicans, I thought was ridiculous.
I think to call somebody out for saying things that you find to be racist or disparaging to a community is one thing. That doesn't mean they think they deserve to die from political violence. I also think everyone said and condemned that was in office, that was a Democrat, condemned the killing, but they're also allowed to say what he actually said. They're allowed to quote the man, and they're also allowed to say, we don't think that we need to honor him in our Congress. He was a podcaster. Okay, so they're allowed to say that and also say this is wrong and political violence should never happen. And that's what I saw most, if not all, Democratic leaders do. And I saw a lot of people online that were labeled Democrats maybe say disparaging remarks, but that has nothing to do with leadership in office, public elected officials, and Charlie Kirk.
All right, let's get into the actual shooting itself. I did note we showed one video. We did not show the one that shows the opposite side of the car, which does show that she did hit the officer. He bounced off the front fender of her car, and the shots that were fired, one of them was through the front windshield, right? So that alone is evidence that this car was in danger of hitting and killing him. Doesn't matter how fast the car is moving. I was hit by a car going 5 miles per hour, suffered a traumatic brain injury. It's a 2-ton box of steel, right? This officer was previously dragged by a accused legal alien pedophile back in June. He was dragged 100 yards, had 33 stitches in both of his arms. In that case, he actually tried de-escalatory tactics multiple times before he was dragged with his arm still in the car. And so I think that speaks to his frame of mind as this woman, yes, originally backs up, then puts the car in drive and accelerates towards him. He tries to jump out of the way, but fires those shots. And I think there's no doubt that this is a tragedy. But the question is, if you are impeding federal law enforcement, obstructing federal law enforcement, refuse to comply with officers' orders who are trying to detain you, and then you decide to actually drive into the officer, hitting him on your way out as you're peeling away, I just am confused as to why deadly force in that situation is not justified.
Well, the number one issue for me overseeing everything that I'm saying is the fact that our administration and federal authorities, Kristi Noem, responded immediately and called this woman a domestic terrorist while they were still analyzing footage, maybe within an hour of the incident, and rushed to judgment. And so we would like, at the very least, since we don't have all the facts and information and there's an ongoing investigation, to say we are reviewing this footage. We never want to see an American life lost, but we also never want to see an official killed or hurt in this way. And so if anything, they could say both sides of the aisle about how they feel without condemning this woman immediately and taking what they're seeing on blog posts by potential other people in the neighborhood about her potential affiliations and labeling her a domestic terrorist. Because a lot of what I looked into does not add up in any familial account or any of her ex-husband's account or anything that I'm reading about other people who knew her pretty well. So I think doing your job as a federal agent does not mean killing someone, and we should not automatically go to deadly force. Robbie and I were talking about this yesterday. So yes, I learned from that conversation that you cannot shoot at the tire or shoot at someone's leg. These are not options, right? Because they could create more chaos. But what you can do is decide, are you in mortal threat? Do I really need to kill this person? And for that, many people reviewed that video and said, at the very least, hold off on judgment. And that's what we're asking of the federal government, to hold off on judgment without condemning this woman, because this is a tragedy. You don't want an American citizen killed as you're looking to remove immigrants from the country. Nobody voted for that.